Hi friends. So I wanted to talk a little bit about depression today. I don't know who of you out there have depression or know of someone who has depression. But it's a difficult thing for people because unlike other illnesses, one doesn't have any particular signs unless of course you're seriously depressed and you can't function. And of course, there are many people who are like that, and there are many people who manage to function and just kind of deal with it in various ways, whether it be through meditation or medication or doing exercise. There's various ways one can deal with depression, and but in a society where despite the fact that there's a lot of education about it now, one still runs into situations where people like to use it against you. They like to use it against people who have depression. And I've seen that with some people online. Like there's one excellent advocate called Debbie Lassignan who has openly spoken about. Debbie Lassignan has a Facebook page, Sane Progressive, and she openly talks about depression that she's had all her life. She openly talks about it on her channel on occasion, and she's an incredibly intelligent woman, and she does a great job with her channel, and she speaks some truths that others are not so courageous to speak about due to wanting to remain in groups or whatever, or that they want to remain in some sort of political affiliation or something like that. She speaks truth to power, and she also speaks some uncomfortable truths. And I'm sure if you are a vegan advocate, you probably know what that's like. And I've seen people use that against her when she was so outspoken about it, about her depression, when she started saying some uncomfortable truths about certain people in a particular group, a political group. They started calling her, they started reaching for ableism and basically trying to disparage her by making out that she's, not sane, as in the opposite of what her channel sort of says, which isn't about mental health so much. It's about just being sane. Progressive means, being a progressive and keeping your feet on the ground and not being pulled into beliefs that are obviously false. It's just sort of being grounded. But they sort of use that against her, and basically were trying to make out like she's, insane in a way. So using that revelation against her. And that's very unfortunate. I mean, when one is trying to make a point about something, there's no... it's really unfortunate to reach for ad hominem like that. It just shows they actually don't have any sort of argument at all to be reaching for things that to try and discredit her by saying she's, basically implying that she's kind of unstable mentally or whatever. And that's very unfortunate because she's had struggles in her life and she's done incredibly well. And there's, she's actually quite grounded and is just very passionate too. So that's very unfortunate, and we certainly should try and avoid going down that ableist path to make a point. And I know what that's like too, having people going around saying I'm, because of one person who's probably talked about something I spoke to them in confidence. And this isn't a secret. I've already talked about this in a recent podcast I did on Vegan Trove, but I've had depression on and off since I was 15. And it's been difficult for me at times. But, like we all have our things we have to deal with, right? So that's what, a thing that I have to deal with. And it's, in fact, I think probably made me more empathetic in some ways, I hope anyway. I hope that it's brought out some, good things. And I think sometimes, the things that we have to deal with often can bring out some good qualities, or some things that we can use that are beneficial. Or it can bring out, can bring out unfortunate things too. So, and I've sort of that's been used against me and a certain group, and I'm sure if you follow my Vegan Trove podcast, November or October of 2015, you'd probably know the group I'm speaking about, and I won't revisit that here, but there was a bunch of people going around who I didn't even know, telling people that telling strangers and friends of mine on social media, telling them that I was crazy, literally using that word crazy. These are people that I didn't even know. And that was all just to sort of, in an attempt to isolate me and discredit me so that no one would listen to my work or spread my work or whatever. And that's a very unfortunate thing, because I know that stemmed from probably a conversation I had with someone about, sort of a private conversation that I had with one of those people about having depression. And then unfortunately, it was used against me. So this is something, that I'm talking about depression here now because it's one of those sort of taboo subjects in a way, even though there's plenty of talk about it now, because governments seem to, the Australian government anyway, seems to be more, they've been sort of talking about depression more, except not really providing more services that are satisfactory services about it. But it's one of those things that even though it's not so problematic talking about it, it's more out there, even though there's still this sort of a stigma with it, because it's not something that's visible really, and yet so many people have it. It's like, I don't know, 1 in 5, or is it 1 in 4? I don't know. It's sort of a very high percentage, and there's a lot of people that don't speak about it. And I also argue that even today, I think more people have it, and this has been argued as well, that in other circles, that there's a sort of an existential factor to this, where we're living in very difficult times, and on many levels, socially, and things are getting harder for people to live. Financially, it's problematic for many people. And I've talked about neoliberalism and how that's affected people. I've talked about that on other vlogs, and of course, then there's the climate change thing, where we're in the 6th mass extinction, and that's actually becoming more and more obvious that things are pretty dire. If you're listening to anything other than mainstream media, you can see that things are becoming dire, and it's becoming sort of runaway global warming. So you have to sort of live in this. You have to live in this sort of a situation where you have to live in sort of a world where and try and function in a sort of a society which is kind of, in some ways, climate change is sort of like being pushed. It's not just climate change deniers that are denying what's going on. People are sort of trying, I think, to just pretend like it's going to be taken care of, or that maybe it's not as dire as it is. And I've talked about this on my podcast. There's a podcast I did about a year or so ago called No One to... What's it called? This podcast was called No One to Remember, No One Left to Tell, I think. Happy little podcast it was. And I talk about this openly because if we can't face that, if we can't face the fact that there's possibly imminent extinction on the horizon for humans, and if we can't talk about what that means for us, then that's kind of sad. It's sad. So it's sad, and I think, if we want to live a sort of a authentic kind of a life, we have to at least acknowledge that that's a possibility, and that it's not a possibility way down the track for our children's children, as people like to sort of keep saying that it's something to do with, it's going to be something that our children's children are going to deal with, but it's not. It's happening right now, and it's just very serious. It looks very much like it's going to be all over for us in a few decades, and I'm talking about maybe three decades even, because of the feedback loops, there's many feedback loops happening at this point now. It's kind of in a runaway state. The Arctic's going to be free of ice soon, and the oceans are warming to the point where there's great swathes of oceans that there's really low oxygen levels, and so fish are not going to be able to function in that ocean anymore. Fish aren't going to be able to live, and that's spreading because the ocean is the area that's heating up the worst. And once the oceans are heating up, then of course that's going to mean that there's going to mean a whole lot of problems for us then. And when the Arctic has melted, there's going to be some problems. There's going to be some problems for us that I don't think we're going to be able to reverse. It's just going to keep going. Now, I know that some people go, oh no, here she goes again. She's talking about imminent extinction. For me to just pretend like that's not an issue, it's like the elephant in the room. So anyway, my point in bringing this up really was that, there's a lot of people that are sort of going on as business as usual and pretending like everything is going to be okay, something's going to happen to fix it, geoengineering, or somebody's going to actually do something. But there's nothing really that much can be done. I mean, we can try and do what we can, but the things that have already been put in place 40 years ago that are happening now, the global warming is there's things that happened 40 years ago is what is occurring right now. So there's not a whole lot we can do anymore to stop it, even if everything stopped tomorrow, including animal agriculture. It still has its own propulsion sort of thing, you know? So that's sort of something that we need to get our head around. But the point I was making about depression is that even if you sort of you didn't have depression, that can affect somebody. Just sort of knowing that you're kind of doing all the average things that you do in life, because really, what are you going to do? Stop doing stuff because you know because you realize that things are kind of over for us? I mean, are you supposed to just stop living? You have to continue on and also try and be of some benefit. Try and be of some benefit to others, right? Otherwise, you may as well be dead. So, even though I kind of know that it could be over in 2 or 3 decades, and it may not, but it's most likely, looking at the science, not following mainstream media, but actually looking at the science, it's looking very much like it could be over for us in 2 or 3 decades, because there's an exponential thing happening at this point. Exponential warming and some many other factors, many feedback loops all happening at the same time. So, I had a sort of a bit of a grieving period when I realized this in about late 2013. And then I just sort of thought, okay, well, you just have to go on. You just kind of continue on, and you try and enjoy the moment. You try and not sweat the small stuff. Try and live in the moment, and try and be kind to others wherever you can, and sort of try and, like I say, not sweat the small stuff. Not be kind of, when people are crappy towards you, then I don't know. Of course, we're all human, and we respond, by getting upset or whatever. But I mean, we could all be dead in 30 years, like depending on what age you are. So, I mean, we should be kind to one another if that's the case, shouldn't we? Like, try and just sort of think, well, we're all in the same boat. We're all in the same boat. And we're all just hairless monkeys. We're all just animals that when you strip away everything, we're just hairless monkeys that want to be want to feel relevant, want to be loved. We really sort of desire community in a way, but our communities have kind of been destroyed through various political functions and through, it's been basically dismantled. And so we've lost a lot of community. So we've got a fractured sort of a community, and that's why I think a lot of people on social media are all clumping together, because in many ways that's the only sort of real community that's actually fixed in some ways that they can access, which is kind of sad, because a couple of 100 years ago, although it wasn't great then, but I mean, people had more of a sort of a, people knew one another and had some continuity, and people in that community were a witness to your life in a way. Of course, there's a lot of problems that came with that, which were that also people knew all about you, and if they took a disliking to you, and you were in a small community, that could be very difficult. But there was many benefits to being in that sort of thing, and in that sort of small community, and people knowing who you are, and hopefully valuing you. But now, I mean, I counted I counted how many times I've moved in my life, and I've moved 20 times since I was 20. And that's probably not very much compared to actually most people I know. My partner's moved like 40 times, even moved countries. And she was born in the United States. So, she's moved 40 times and I've moved 20 times. And so there's no continuity even of friendships, and people tend to be more likely to not continue on with friendships. It's like they're temporary. That's what I've noticed over time, is people that I thought that I'd still be friends with, people I thought I would still be friends with now, sort of I'd been friends with for a long time. I think just the time and distance and my moving is kind of gradually taken that away from me. So we're not really in touch anymore, which I find sad, because I'm actually kind of big on keeping up contact with friends. I try to do that, no matter how long ago I had a friendship with them. If it was a good friendship, I don't believe in the sort of the time kind of, that distance and time means that's the end of it. That's not sort of really who I am. But it seems like a lot of people don't seem to value that too much. It's like if you're not in their immediate environment, they don't keep in touch. You lose contact. So that's kind of sad, so it's hard to keep long-term friendships with people in a way. But I think, in some ways the world is a little bit and I use this word in a kind of a not in how it's meant to be used. I mean, I use this word and I don't mean this to be ableist, because it's just after what I've been talking about with depression and stuff. But the world, I think, is we're all a little bit crazy, because we're not meant to be living in these, the way we're living. We're not meant to be living in a society which doesn't, where government seems to be doing the best it can to take away everything from us. Like they're basically sort of exercising power over us that they should never have had. We're also not meant to be in such fractured communities where we're doing sort of jobs that are not, kind of a lot of them are not beneficial really to our spiritual and mental health. They're just functions that we do so that these are the things, wattlebirds and kookaburras, and we have paddymellons and possums and little bettongs and all sorts of sweet little animals that live down in the forest down there. And every evening they come up, quite a few of them, about 20 or so little paddymellons. They're like small little kangaroos. They're about a metre high. And there's about 20 to 24 of them living in the forest, and every evening they come up and they graze on this. We have about 5 acres here, and they graze on the grass, and we give them some kangaroo pellets too, just as a little extra, so they come up and have the kangaroo pellets that are very healthy for them, and they drink out of a little water station we've left for them, which I refresh every day, and they and the little bettongs are very friendly, and they come up to the door, and we give them some special seed, and they love that. And this is sort of, we're very fortunate. I realize how unusual this situation is. I realize how incredibly fortunate I am. I haven't always been this fortunate, but but I'm certainly a lot more fortunate than a lot of people that I've met in my life to be able to live in a sort of a place like this, um, and and that's sort of very rare to be able to live in a lovely rural area and have contact with little animals from the forest um, and they live down there. I consider the 3 acres of our 5 are theirs. Occasionally, I go down to. We planted some very fast-growing Tasmanian regnans, which are they're like the tallest tree in the world, and we planted a few of those down there. So I go down there sometimes to check on them and see how they're going. And occasionally I'll hear little scamperings down there because they realize, oh no, there's a human down here. She's not supposed to be here. And mind you, when they come up to have something to eat, they're totally fine with me. But down in the forest, it's a different story. It's like, oh no, you can't come down here. So I'm really sort of traveling far away from the depression thing. I guess this is a nice story and kind of takes us away from the imminent extinction thing, right? But and we look through the French doors in the evening, and there they all are, grazing on the kangaroo pellets and having a lovely time. And but I'm very, very fortunate, and I know that. I know that I'm fortunate, and I'm grateful every day for that. I'm even more grateful because I realize there's a finite amount of time left, and there always has been a finite amount of time left. I mean, we're all going to die. It's just, and we don't know when that is. But this could be premature for all of us, and I'm not meaning to be gloomy, but I'm aware of that, and so it makes my time even more precious. It makes it even more precious realizing that. But it also sometimes, I try not to think about it, but it's always just this thing hanging over my head that I'm aware of. It's just sitting there, and I know that even though I look around, everything looks very normal and beautiful. There's a lovely hills in the distance and the Huon River, and you see the sunset in the afternoon, and it's just beautiful, and the little animals, and there's heaps of birds here. It all looks very normal, but I realize that there's something that's happening, and it's eventually going to catch up to us here, because it's all interconnected, and we're not going to be exempt in Tasmania, even though it's far south and it's near Antarctica. We're all going to be affected, and so, when you're aware that there's something like this is going to happen at some point, and that possibly, everything is going to go so strange that there'll be no, that basically food will become incredibly scarce, and who knows, about the water supplies in various parts of the world are becoming more and more strained because of this lack of snow, and the snow is not feeding the rivers and all of this sort of thing. So it's who knows when food might run out, and that's a serious thing. Who knows when food might run out? When all the snow melts and it's not replenished. Who knows when water will run out from many of these countries? Who knows when Bangladesh is going to go underwater and all that kind of thing. So just knowing all that stuff, this is something that as a species we've never had to deal with before, the possible real imminent extinction of our species. And of course, I'm not talking about non-human animals now, because but they're going to be, of course, they're going to be go with us because the sixth mass extinction will take. We're on the front lines, humans and other animals. Most other species will go with us. So we've kind of ruined it completely for them, um, which a lot of people don't even acknowledge, which I just find amazing. But that's not surprising because we're living in a non-vegan world, aren't we? And people don't think about non-human animals. They just think about them as something to look at, and it's like, oh no, well, the polar bears are going to be gone soon. Oh no, we won't be able to see them anymore. You know, it's not about them and the fact that they have lives and that they're individuals who wanted to live and just be able to exist on the planet. When we talk about it, it's more about, oh no, we won't be able to see them anymore. You see, that's the typical thing about not being vegan, that it's all about us, you know. I mean, we're a funny species, aren't we? We've gotten so far away from what we are supposed to be that we don't even realize we're animals anymore. We think we're something else, something separate from everything. And that's our undoing, but sadly it's also the undoing of other animals too, because we're going to take them with us. And if any of you are interested, there's an essay by Chris Hedges called "This Time We're Taking the Whole Planet with Us." That's quite a shocking essay, and it talks about Easter Island and what happened on Easter Island. And basically, Easter Island is almost like, you could say that that's how, if you read about what happened on Easter Island, that's sort of what's basically happening to us now on a global scale. They kept on eating away at their resources and chopping down trees and everything, and basically, it went from a very well-off society to basically having nothing, and ending up eating the dogs that live with them. That's sort of how dire it got. So, and then, that civilization ended. And this is what's happening to us on a global scale. So we're sort of like Easter Island 2.0 in a way, except that when we go, that's the end of it for us anyway. Of course, it's not the end of it for the planet. The planet will, even if it ends up with only bacteria there, those bacteria, evolution will take place, and in a few million years, this planet will be, sort of have a whole different ecosystem and whole different life forms happening on it. It will go on and probably be quite beautiful, just in a very different way to what we know now. And of course, in I don't know, 4 or 8, I don't know if it's 4 billion years, the sun is going to burn out and basically explode and take the whole solar system pretty much with it. So, I mean, everything is impermanent and it comes to an end. This Earth will come to an end too in a few billion years. That's a sad thing, but I mean, that's the fact, Everything is impermanent, really, except space, But just back to, depression and how one functions knowing that, that things are going to come to an end, and it's possible that we may starve to death, right? I mean, that's very, very likely. People have been starving to death for a long time. Or there's, people are starving to death right now, which is completely immoral. It shouldn't be happening because we've got plenty of food on this planet, plenty of food, and tons and tons of it. Just, ridiculous amounts of food are thrown away every day. It's disgraceful, right? But there are people starving on the planet and intentionally cause famines, like the one in Yemen right now, where one child every 10 minutes is dying from a famine, which is caused by Saudi Arabia and the US-funded Saudi Arabia bombing campaign of Yemen. It's an ethnic cleansing that's going on there right now, you see. But the thing is that we've been watching, in the West, we've been watching all this famine happening, and oh, isn't that terrible, the famines and stuff. And now that it's going to be coming to our door, suddenly it's, oh my God, the famine, you know? This is sort of like how we function here in the West. It's like the oppression that has visited others is now coming to us, and now suddenly we think it's awful, you know? I mean, this is what's wrong with our species, isn't it? Really, you know? This is what's wrong with us. Completely, I don't know, we're just selfish little hairless monkeys. And I've said before, an evolutionary experiment that's gone terribly wrong. And this is why we are at the point we are of imminent extinction, because we have completely lost our way. And of course, I've said in the past, the good news about our extinction, and I don't say this with misanthropy, but the good news about that is that this planet will be without us as the violent species that we are, that seems to be incapable of living in harmony with one another and living in harmony with other animals. We don't seem to be able to do it. And so it's best that we go and leave this planet in peace to hopefully regenerate. If it ever does, it will regenerate, but it's going to have a lot of crap to deal with, like radiation, and it's filling the oceans and stuff, and possibly if we don't close down these nuclear plants, all these nuclear plants are going to be affecting everything, but it will eventually recover. But this is what we've done. You know, this is our legacy to this planet, is the destruction of most other species on the planet, and a complete pollute. You know, we've completely polluted, and we're going for all we're worth to put in pipelines. I mean, it truly is, and I use this word, and I mean it. It's an insanity what we're doing now. You know, more pipelines, and I mean, we could have had this all changed in around 1960, when the writing was on the wall. Even then, right? It really was. The writing was on the wall. And about the overpopulation, if you've ever heard of Limits to Growth, that was a book that was written many decades ago about the fact that, you know, we cannot continue on breeding the way we are, and, you know, using up finite resources. So you know, we're stupid. The simple fact is we can't organize, and we're really stupid and greedy. We cannot organize ourselves out of a paper bag. I mean, I laugh. I have to laugh because even people can't even stop using plastic bags, for God's sake. You know, for goodness sake, how we can't even do that. You know, stop using plastic bags. I mean, I go to some supermarkets sometimes, and people are they've got plastic bags. So, you know, anyway. But what I'm trying to say is that we're going to be faced with some situations now where it's going to test everybody's mental stability. And it's already coming, right? And, you know, and that's why I say that we're going a little bit crazy. Because, you know, things weren't supposed to be like this. We weren't supposed to be living with 7 billion people. We're not supposed to also have knowledge of everything that's going on the planet. We're really only supposed to have knowledge about who's in like a small community. That's what we were supposed to be, little hairless monkeys that had a small community, and we kind of, you know, we might have had some fights and stuff, but I mean, we were supposed to just have small communities. Now we're kind of aware of everything that's going on in the world. It's mind-boggling, really. You know, it's just, we're not supposed to be living in overcrowded sort of areas, and we're not supposed to be living on top of one another. This is sort of, we're just little animals, really, and we're not supposed to be dealing with all of this. It's no wonder we're a bit crazy, in a way. And of course, we've never shifted from this patriarchal model that we seem to, just keeps going on, this awful patriarchal society that we're living in. And sadly, we're going to have that to the end. I mean, I think and not only that, we're still otherizing not only animals, but just one another, everything, otherizing groups. I mean, God, when did that's so sad to me, because right up until the end, we're probably going to be doing that, and it's only getting worse now because of all the austerity stuff, and people, instead of looking to the powers that are causing all this, neoliberal austerity stuff, and instead of looking to them as the problem, they turn on one another, and it's turning on asylum seekers and my minority group, and my minority group's going to be sort of back to sort of, the 50s or something. There'll be people attacking all kinds of groups, It's just how it goes. It just plays out. It plays out in history. So, what a shame. This is how we're going to go out. It's really like a whimper and not a bang. It's going to be sad. But, the thing is that even though this sort of sounds all kind of awful and stuff, but it couldn't go any other way than how it has. It really couldn't, because, we've been doing some awful things to one another. And we've also been allowing awful things to be being done to each other. Right? And it's so dysfunctional that it couldn't end up any other way than how it's ending up right now, with the people that we have in power and the way we are. It just couldn't go any other way. And so it's almost inevitable that this was going to go like this, It's almost inevitable, I'd say, that it had to end like this, in such a bad way. And all empires, all civilizations end up, all you see now are ruins of civilizations. The great Roman Empire and different empires, all they are now is just ruins, and that's the way it goes. And eventually, and this is happy news, eventually there'll be absolutely no trace of us left. Even all the radiation one day will be gone. But there'll be no trace, there'll be no pyramids, there'll be no New York City. It'll all be gone, and there'll be just beautiful, whatever it is, whatever form it takes, beautiful sort of different kind of vegetation. And that's kind of a nice thought, I guess, in a sort of a weird way. So, anyway, I guess what I was trying to say in all this is that, I love life, and I love life, and I'm incredibly lucky that I've had the life I have had, and really, really fortunate. And I realize, when you get to know what's going on in the world, I realize how fortunate I am, and I realize how wrong that is, that I should have the life that I have and other people don't have that at all. And there's nothing really much I can do about that. I just happen to be really fortunate that I was born a white person, and that I was adopted by two lovely people, and that I had quite a comfortable life. It wasn't perfect by any means, but it sort of, it was, I had a lot of wonderful opportunities that most people don't get. We weren't wealthy or anything, but we were certainly, we had enough, and we weren't worried about where our next meal was coming from, and we weren't being, shot in the streets or anything. We didn't have war. there's so many things I'm so grateful for. But I'm also at the same time, I'm so incredibly sad that this doesn't have to be like this. It doesn't have to have all this disparity. The world never had to be like this, where where there's people that are poor and people that are being killed and bombed. It never had to be like this. And this is how we're going to go out. It never had to be like this. It could have been such a beautiful world. It could have been a vegan world where we lived in harmony with other animals. It could have been like a sort of like a paradise in a way. It could have been that. And if it could be, it would be so easy too to make it like that right now. It could be so easy. It could become that if people were able to step outside themselves. It could be a beautiful place still, even if we are going out, even if we are going extinct. It could be a beautiful place to be, a loving place and a vegan world, even if we are going out. It would be lovely to have that at some point. I don't, and sadly, I don't think there's time for a vegan planet. If we were going to be around, say, for another 100 years without the sort of the tragedy that's coming, the imminent catastrophe that's coming, if we were going to be around for another 100 years, I'd say that's probably, we would have a vegan world probably in 100 years. But we don't have time now, sadly. But still, it's not going to stop me. I'm not going to stop promoting veganism. I'm going to do that for as long as I can, because every time somebody becomes vegan, they're not using 100 or more animals a year, so that's 100 and more animals aren't being bred into existence to be tortured and murdered. So that's fine. That's so if I can sort of in some way prevent the torture and murder and breeding into existence of non-humans, then that's great. So we just keep on trying to be beneficial. But we also, I think, we need to get our head around the fact that things are looking pretty grim, and try and make the most of things, because we don't have that much time left now, and try and love one another, try and not sweat the small stuff, maybe let go of, of hatred of individuals that might have wronged us, or just sort of try and, because it doesn't matter in the end. It doesn't matter if, all these arguments or whatever we've had with people, in the end, it really doesn't matter. It doesn't mean anything. Death is the great equalizer. Anyway, I've raved on long enough now. I really only was going to talk very briefly about depression and ableism, and it's turned into something else. I was going to mention the whole existential crisis and imminent extinction is something that's definitely has to affect us mentally. It has to affect one's mental health if you've got that looming over your head. Anyway, that's really all I wanted to say. So I'll leave you with a little view from another part of the land here. Down through the trees there's a dam. And sadly you can hear a little sheep in the background.